Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started now. Um, this is something that I've had a lot of people reach out to me, asking me to organize something to this effect, to get together people like yourselves who are interested in being a part of intentional communities or permaculture farms or, eco villages, whatever names you want to give it. And it's definitely one of my goals. I've been talking about this for 3 years now, since early 2016, and writing about this in one of my books about my plans to try to launch an intentional community, build an intentional community built around certain principles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I guess today's goal is I pretty much just want to share a little bit more detail about what my plans are, what the vision I have in my mind is, and then hear from everybody who wants to share on this call to discuss, where you're at. Like, what resources do you have, or do you know where you were trying to go to? Do you have land already? There's a lot of different people in different places and different backgrounds and situations. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to start having this conversation. And unless anybody has any major issues against it, I am recording this call right now, and I will probably load this to YouTube afterwards just to share it with other people, so we can try to get more people interested and perhaps do this on like a monthly basis with anybody who just wants to be a part of these conversations. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yep.
All right, cool. Okay, so I will talk a little bit about the vision that I've had for the last few years. Without getting really deep into my work or anything like that, I do have a very specific vision of at least the foundation of what a community would look like that I would like to be a part of. And it's, I think, very simple and basic that I think most people on this call will likely be familiar with. And I kind of describe this using this pyramid, basically 3 different main points, key points that are would have to be the foundation of a community that I personally would want to be involved in, or that I would want to help start. The first would be self-ownership / the non-aggression principle / the golden rule. I mean, you guys are all familiar with this idea, essentially that it's wrong to initiate force, coercion, or violence on another human being, and that we can have discussion, we can have debate, we can agree to disagree, we can have dialogue, we can choose to not communicate, to not be friends, we can choose to sever our relationships, but it's wrong, immoral, unethical, whether illegal or not. It's just wrong to use force or violence on another human being, other than self-defense. And why do I mention something like that? That's kind of a philosophical thing, because for me, anybody that I'm going to choose to invest my time, money, and energy, my life with, I would want to know that I'm dealing with a sane, rational person that understands that using violence is the way that governments and corporations get things done. And I don't want to live with and create a community with people who think that violence is the way to get things done. But that doesn't mean that we should not believe in the right to defend ourselves. I absolutely believe in your right to defend yourself. I'm not a pacifist personally. I just think that that has to be the foundation. And again, that's the idea of the non-aggression principle, the golden rule. And also, I think just part of the whole idea that of self-ownership, that each of us own ourselves, and that, we own the fruits of our labor and our time and our energy. And part of that is respecting that self-ownership of other people and not initiating force and violence. Does everybody understand that basic idea? Did I explain that well enough? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Cool. All right. So the second really important point to me, besides the non-aggression principle and self-ownership, is permaculture and just sustainability in general. And sustainability, I think sometimes the word gets a bad rap because most people think of it in terms of like government and United Nations and how they want to use things for sustainability. But I'm talking about true sustainability, even the idea of regenerative practices. And again, to me, permaculture, which is, people have given it a number of different definitions, but it's basically a philosophy on ecological design, on how you interact with the planet. And instead of using more traditional, at least in the Western world, practices like monocropping and really invasive, destructive processes, you work with the land. And there's, a variety of principles and ethics that go along with permaculture. And you can take permaculture design courses at various places around the world to learn more about it and how to use the natural systems of the planet and of the land that you have, where your water flows into, and where's the best place to plant your food, instead of just doing traditional, and I say that in quotations, traditional agriculture, but actually looking into things like permaculture. So that's a really important point to me as well. And I've seen some amazing things. I put some of these examples on my YouTube channel, specifically Punta Mona in Costa Rica. If you guys haven't seen those videos, I recommend checking that out, because it's already a beautiful piece of land. But Stephen Brooks, over the last 20 something years, has been able to bring plants and fruits and foods from all around the world and just turn this isolated piece of land that is, you have to take a 2-hour hike through the jungle to get to it, or take a 20-minute boat ride to get to it, because it's pretty isolated. They're like off the grid. They have electricity and power and internet powered by solar power, and they have just surrounded by all this amazing food. And so there are real world examples of people being able to do this and not being dependent on external systems, and thriving and having good, healthy food and being happy and all these wonderful things. So to me, permaculture is a big part of that. That's something that's got to be foundational in the way that whoever we ends up being, go forward with laying down gardens and laying down food and fruit trees and these kinds of ideas, like thinking in terms of permaculture. So that would be the second major point that to me is a necessary foundation for me. The third and I guess final would be mindfulness. And mindfulness, obviously it's a pretty broad term. It could be applied in a variety of ways. And I think it will be applied in a variety of ways. I'm definitely not trying to say that any community I need to be a part of, everybody must meditate every morning at 5 a.m. for an hour, or anything crazy like that. I just really want to live among other people who I know who are also on a journey of self-healing and working on their own traumas, and together collectively as a group, trying to uplift each other and inspire each other and help each other. And so, for me, that might include something like meditation. For somebody else, it might just, they have their own methods or, their own ways of kind of cultivating that state of mindfulness. But as a group, I think it would mean ideas like nonviolent communication, which is a really amazing book written by Marshall Rosenberg. He's a psychologist who's deceased now. And he did conflict resolution all around the world, working with like different gangs, working with Palestinians and Israelis, and just has so much to say and so much documented cases of his methods working and diffusing situations around the world. And so basically being able to use these tactics of what he calls nonviolent communication. And just briefly, it's just a strategy, a way to communicate with other people that can help reduce or prevent, miscommunication and conflict. And by recognizing that typically when a conflict arises, somebody is feeling like their needs are not being met, their need to be heard, their need to be felt, whatever it may be. And it's these really simple tactics, but it's a really great book. And it's something that can be done as a group together. So I don't know, I don't know what that would look like. Again, I don't want to like come in like a dictator and act as if I know as one individual what a community should look like. I just personally know that these are foundational principles that I want to strive for, and the details will be figured out by whoever is actually involved. But I think something like maybe there's like a once a week group session of, not therapy or anything like that, but nonviolent communication, either reading the book together or just learning the strategies so that they become habitual and become a part of the way you communicate with other people. And that can reduce conflicts, because one of the things I've learned from Stephen Brooks, who is the founder of Punta Mona and several other successful communities in Costa Rica, is that communities, intentional communities and eco villages, they don't fail because they have an abundance of water, or because they have too much fruit, or because they have, the best soil. They fail because of communication errors, because of people not getting along, because of people failing to learn how to dialogue in an effective, compassionate way, and have all parties feel heard and everything, without destroying beautiful things. And I've seen that myself. I'm sure you guys have seen great projects of your own in different ways and different aspects of your life get destroyed by miscommunication, lack of communication, and things like that. So that's why nonviolent communication, to me, I kind of put that in that mindfulness area. So again, the non-aggression principle, golden rule, mindfulness in various ways, culture, like those to me are the kind of triad or 3 points that I want to build a foundation on. And the details after that, like I don't really know. Like, people, a big part of communities is economics as well. I have this really amazing book called Creating Intentional Communities or something. I'll show it to you guys. Somebody gifted it to me recently, and it's just this wealth of resources on intentional communities by these people who went to visit different intentional communities around the world for like 30 years. And they look at everything from like economics to property and all these different ideas. Like as far as economics goes, I'm not necessarily interested in a situation of like shared income or things like that. I'm more interested in like living amongst or with other kind of entrepreneurial minded people. And, you know, everybody kind of maybe has their own source of income. And if people want to collaborate and come together on specific projects, then, you know, that would be a voluntary arrangement. But I don't want to like, I definitely don't want to be in a situation where you have any of my income and I have any of your income. I think that unless we make specific arrangements that your money is your money and my money is my money, you know, things like that. So, but I'm also open to all these kinds of ideas. This is the book I was talking about. It's called Creating a Life Together, Practical Tools to Grow Eco-Villages and Intentional Communities by Diana Leaf Christian. And it's pretty insane amount of knowledge and info in this book. I definitely recommend checking that out. I've only skimmed through it. I haven't got to really fully read it yet, but I think I've said enough on my particular vision. I'm open to take any questions if anybody has any. And if not, then like I said, we can just go through and whoever feels like sharing, you don't have to share if you're just here to listen, but anybody who wants to share about the situation they're in and their goals and things like that, let's go ahead and do that. So either questions or other people who want to speak up.
This is Chris. I just want to know if anybody has any land to start the ball rolling. Did you hear me? You didn't hear me.
Hello. Whoa.
What was the end of Chris's question? He fell off after he said land.
Can't hear it. Really can't hear him.
He said he was asking if anybody has land, I believe. Was there more to the question, Chris?
That was, I just wanted to know if anybody had land to start.
I do. This is Wes.
Somebody said I do. I know some people who aren't on this phone call in Costa Rica and Canada and Australia and other places that have invited us, but I don't know if any of them are on this call. I think Annie's on this call, actually.
Derrick, I just jumped on, so I'm here.
I'm here too. This is Wes. We met in Costa Rica.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. Sorry about the
Derrick
feedback.
and I
What's
met.
up, Wes? Hey, Annie. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead then. I just finished kind of explaining my whole spiel on the vision I have from a particular community, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to anybody else who wants to speak up about the land they have, the you know, whatever resources you have or where you're at in your journey, and just get a feel for what all is available here.
Well, I don't mind going first. This is Wes. Derrick, first of all, thanks so much for putting this together. Enjoyed meeting you down in Costa Rica, and I feel like you're on the right path. So here's my situation. I'm technically American. I don't claim it. I haven't claimed that status in over a decade. I do own 5.4 acres on an island that's completely off grid, about a 20-minute water taxi from West Vancouver, British Columbia, up in Canada. And I bought this land several years back, and with the intention of building a community there. And I'm completely in line with you, Derrick, as far as those three principles. What I would add to that, and this isn't strict or anything, but coming from the Burning Man world, there's lots of principles that are exercised that you learn there. So radical self-reliance is one of them. Radical inclusionism is another one. And radical self-expression is a third. And the way that my community works, and again, my community is 2 people are there year round. I'm not one of them. And then most of us go there for the summer. I'll be there in April through October. And last year there was about 17 of us. We built a couple tiny homes. We have a communal kitchen. We have a sweat lodge. We barged over a motor home and a 4-wheel drive Toyota and a 6x6. So we've got some infrastructure. We have 2 wells. We have a couple solar panels, a wind turbine. So we're doing it. We're very small. But, you know, the way that we operate is we don't bring the default world into it. You know, like if you bring groceries to the island, you don't hit up everybody for a percent of the groceries you bought. That's the old paradigm. We basically use the Burning Man principle of a gift economy. So whatever you can give, bring it, you know, and if someone feels like you're not pulling your weight, they'll call you out. But so far, there hasn't been any static at all, basically because we're all really good friends. Um, During the summer months, the age range is, I think we've got a couple kids, like a 8, a 10, and a 12-year-old whose parents come during the summer. And then as far as elders, we really don't have any. I'm trying to get my parents involved. Um, but I feel like the 3 generations is important to have in any community, and more if you can get it. Um, but we're always open to new ideas, and anyone who wants to visit is welcome. I'll tell you my email. It's freedomhog@gmail.com. You can just hit me up. Um, and yeah, that's my story, and I'm happy to field any questions.
How many people live there, brother?
2 live there year round, and then, like I said, last summer about 17 of us were living there. People come and go between Vancouver and there because it is so close, even though it's completely off grid. Like you can hop on a water taxi and be in Vancouver in 20 minutes. So, you know, we do grocery runs. People have jobs, or, you know, a lot of people who live there during the summer, they either babysit or they got to go into the city for, you know, a couple days to do something. But the 2 guys who live there year round are both carpenters. So it's good to have those skills. This summer, we're planning to build a couple of earthen homes, maybe start working with hempcrete or hemp board. We want to expand our gardens. We've got a couple fruit trees, but we'd like to expand those too. I'm probably going to drop about 40 grand on infrastructure this coming summer. And again, like I said, I'm only there April through October because I'm not technically Canadian and I don't really want to mess around with the legalities of becoming one. And so I spend my winters in places like Costa Rica, Southeast Asia. And so, you know, it'd be great to connect with other communities. So traveling becomes easy. I know Stephen Brooks down in Costa Rica, amazing guy. He's the living example of what we can all do. So yeah, any more questions, I'm happy to field them.
How many residents do you hope to get to?
So we really don't have a number in mind. There are other acres that we can buy if we get too big. When I bought the property, I thought I was buying a plot of land to build a community, but what I realized is that I literally bought into a community. The development itself is 60 lots that are 5 acres each, and they're all completely off grid. So the people who live there year round are homesteaders. They have goats, they have chickens, they have gardens. You know, some of my neighbors sell at the local farmers markets in Vancouver. But the majority of the properties are only inhabited for a couple of weeks during the summer. They're like second homes for rich people. But there is a good contingency of us that are homesteading there. And so it's a very, you know, when you get into the elements and you're at the mercy of nature, everyone starts to act right. You know, like I can walk to my neighbors and get anything I need from them, and they come over and help us build, and we help them build. So yeah, in that sense, we've already expanded. But you know, it could get quite big. The island itself is probably the size of Manhattan, even though 90% of it is considered crown land and national park. There's less than 100 year-round residents on the whole island.
Yeah, I can relate to island life
There's some feedback going on.
because I spent summers on the island. So you're absolutely right. There's that special camaraderie that just naturally happens from being exposed to the elements, which is wonderful.
I can also tell you that the nice thing about islands is wherever there is a current, and this is in nature or in electricity, man-made electricity, wherever there's a current, there's a perpendicular magnetic field. And so, you know, everything grows really well on the island. We have a compost heap, but it never ever gets composted because if you throw a celery stalk in there, a couple days later, there'll be celery growing. It's a very, very fertile environment. And it's clean air, clean water, clean soil. These are all the things you want to look for if you're out there looking for land. Out of curiosity, is anyone else in the Pacific Northwest on this call?
Didn't hear you there.
No, I don't think it doesn't seem like there's anybody else from up there. All right, well, let's, Wes, I appreciate you sharing, brother. Annie, if you're still there, if you want to share a little bit about your property.
Oh, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just outside the Miami airport, so hopefully it won't be too noisy. So I have 26.2 acres down in Costa Rica. For those that were at Envision, I'm about 10 minutes south of where the site was, and I've got commercial frontage right on the Costanera, and then a short 10-minute walk is beach on the other side of the road. And I've got about 2+ acres that I'm going to do a permaculture farm. I'm going to get that started in the next couple months here before the rains come in May. And I've got 8 ocean view plantels already cut with a road that unites everything. And my first vision for this was a wellness community. My short background is, you know, aging ill parents. My dad gone super fast, pancreatic cancer, 8 weeks, mom, diabetic coma and diabetes and then dementia. And then 2 years ago, moved her to Costa Rica. She was born there. And then this whole new life of mine started unraveling and revealing itself to me, finding this land. I was not looking, but very clear vision of starting a community and teaching how to reverse everything that's plaguing us and creating community, you know, from that. So, you know, I'm kind of new to the scene, but I've been diving deep in the whole functional medicine thing for wellness. And then even before my dad being sick, he passed in 2014, I was hell-bent in the little town that I live in near San Francisco to create this community center. I didn't even know why. And sure as shit, when you start going through like all the things for wellness, what's the number one thing that everybody is craving and that you have to be well is community. So like just instinctively, I've been on this crazy journey, finally connecting a whole lot more dots faster now than I was, 10 years ago. But I also have a deposit on a chunk of land, door to door, 20 minutes from this ocean view property that I believe will be sister properties. Derrick has been there, and it's from Envision straight up the hills there, about 10 minutes. And it's 13 point some odd acres with an ocean view, cloud forest, and then you descend through a little forest to get you to this turquoise river that's absolutely stunning, natural carved canyons and just insane, gorgeous rock. And it's absolutely spectacular. Once you splash into that water, you could care less about the ocean view. And I even said, gosh, I'd maybe even give up my first chunk of land. Like, I'm not in a position just to be acquiring land, but I really feel like this is to be the healing center. And the original chunk is more, you know, it's about bringing different levels of people to make a difference, to turn their thinking and educate and, you know, live by example. And this is my learning lab for all these different various levels of little community businesses to work with the ticos. And I should say I have a very amazing, extensive family in country. My mom was born there, and I've just got beautiful family and friends from years past. And, you know, so it's about networking with them to really, you know, have some boots in the ground before I live there full time, which is probably at least 5 years away with the age of my kids. And that's where I'm at. I'm just, you know, I've got one chunk of land paid for outright. The other I have a deposit on. I've got, you know, a few weeks to pull that investment together. And that's where I'd love to just do, you know, a retreat, kind of like the stilted cabinas that just descend from the ocean view all the way down to the river, of various modalities, and just a lot of deep healing work. And you know, I've got great lines into, you know, the functional medicine scene in the States, and awesome contacts there, as I'm piecing all this together.
Sounds
Awesome,
great.
Annie. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Anybody have questions for Annie? Again, she's got 2 properties in Costa Rica that she's got some big visions for.
And you know, I missed the first 10 minutes as I was dropping my husband at the airport, but I should say, like, you know, I'm looking for investors, permaculture, you know, just whoever wants to be involved. It's just a wide open sheet right now, blank canvas of creating the space. It's just really been happening organically. So all hands on deck.
How do we get in touch with you, Annie?
Well, my email is Annie, ANNIE, at Seas, SEAS, the day, CR.com. That's the best way.
And I will be sending out an email with everybody's contact info after this for everybody who wants me to include. And we can do a follow-up email so everybody can stay in touch. Any other questions for Annie?
When's she coming to the United States to start one up here?
Did you hear that, Annie?
Oh, I'm sorry?
She was asking if you're interested in coming to the United States to start one up there.
Well, I'll tell you, here's something interesting. I live in a town called Burlingame, which is exactly between San Francisco and Silicon Valley. I'm in my family home, and I'm just wrestling with the idea of selling it. I thought this would be a property in the family for perpetuity, but it's a really amazing mid-century Eichler home, so ideally located, but a little bit of a sterile environment, I have to say. The town that it used to be so cool that I grew up in, but you know, it's a pretty amazing place to have as a hub, right in 10 minutes from SFO up in the hills, with access to the city and Silicon Valley and all that stuff that brings. So, you know, I'd entertain some kind of investment idea of turning that price. So it's just it's you know, it's lifespan. There's a lot of things starting to break, you know, and this and that, and so anyways, I could go on and on about that, but it's either sell it now or throw the money into it. And I'd rather invest in these properties in Costa Rica and build new and fresh and something amazing. But I also have like one of the coolest homes right there. So it could be. It's 5 bedrooms, and we're building a little unit out back, and it would be a sweet, unbelievable headquarters for all of us, right? Just to tap into the wealth of the Bay Area. So that's something else to think about.
What % of your time is in Costa Rica?
Not a lot. My mom, I have her living there. So this last 2 years, I've gone back and forth. I think I'm on my 16th trip, and those are, you know, a week to 2 weeks each. So, you know, it's hard for me to move the ball forward super fast without being there full time. But I'm getting my little infrastructure pulled together. So for instance, like Stephen Brooks and Coco walked my land when I was just there, and we're going to put a permaculture plan together and get started on that. So, you know, whether it's Stephen or his team or, you know, some of the other contacts I've made, those are all now finally starting to fall into place. So with different, you know, phases, you know, getting the farm started and some bunk houses that will go around that, and the commercial strip started so I can get an income stream started. Then, you know, more perhaps, you know, the idea and the plan tells what to do there, the building sites. I'm almost thinking, as much as I might not want to, more executive housing, because I said to Stephen, I said, look, like, we have all walks of life, and it's who can you plug and play into these different properties to make the biggest impact with what we're trying to teach. And so, you know, like, who wants ocean view and who can afford it, and how can you, you know, create proper thinking around all that. So that's a little bit out to jury right now. So yeah, but every time I get down there, I head up there and just kind of sit with it, and, you know, I'm getting a little closer to fine tuning that vision.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful place. I recommend everybody who spends any time in Costa Rica, not only looking up Steven's properties in Punta Mona, but hitting up Annie and going on the long walk to check out the whole property. It's beautiful.
And I can send some drone footage and my slide deck and so forth, you know, when we share emails and all that kind of stuff for anyone that's interested.
Mhm.
All right. Anybody else who wants to share about whether or not we've talked to two people now who actually have properties, but whether or not you have a piece of property, whether the US or elsewhere, or you just are thinking about it, you know, I just like to hear from some more people as far as what your thoughts are.
I'd like to say that Chris and I are looking to start something or to join something, and we're going to see an eco village in North Carolina on Wednesday. We're going to be documenting it, but my particular interest lies in social systems. I'm not sure, is that Clark down the bottom? I thought you used a different name. Pardon me if I'm wrong. He's mentioned something about there's a few people in his eco village, and they pretty much have a gifting society there, which works great when, you know, everybody's cooperative. But the thing is, when it comes to towns and bigger communities, there's the problem with our society is that we have psychopaths, and they've made their way to the top, and we're just figuring it out now how we've been tricked by them, and that's just their way of thriving. And so I believe that we need most people need, maybe we don't, but maybe we do, I don't know, some sort of a money system to transition to a no money system, because we're still using money. We still have to get goods and services using money, but we've got to transition off that. And that's my field of main interest. But, and, you know, and I just I'm working on doing social systems differently to what we've ever done. For example, the idea of copyright is completely fallacious, and same with patents. It just means that we have to keep reinventing things all the time. And so I just want you to know, guys, that I have been working on things. And another thing is social system type of things, and also introducing and adopting another calendar, because what we're in is distorted time, static time. And if we had, my suggestion is the 30 moon calendar. And as Derrick was saying at the beginning, the basis of a society must be freedom for everybody. You cannot stop. You shouldn't be trying to force anything on someone. And what we got to do is work with our communications and get better at that. So I just wanted to put that out there to just let you know what we're working on. That's particularly what I'm working on, and Chris is working on some other things.
What was your name again?
Denise.
Denise, nice to meet you. I just want to respond to a couple of things there. I definitely think that most people here on this call are probably open to all forms of, I guess you could say, alternative forms of exchange, you know, whether that's alternative currencies, not the US dollar, not the state currency, or barter system or gift system, whatever. I do agree with you that, you know, we're at a point in time where there's going to be a money system. I think that I don't, for one, I, you know, we can get into a whole discussion about money itself, but I do think that where we're at now in time and history, there's always going to be some form of currency, whether that's seashells or tulips or, you know, pieces of paper. We're going to have some form of currency for exchanging certain goods. And so I think it would be really interesting as a community, maybe to focus on alternative exchanges. And, you know, there are a lot of opportunities now for us, like with crypto offers opportunities for us to exchange on an even bigger international level. So it's really exciting. I'm interested to hear what you're working on with all that. And you mentioned the 13-month calendar. Wes was the one that was talking earlier about his community in Canada. He actually, that's one of his other main projects. I'll let Wes share about that if he wants to. He's going around promoting people to adopt the 13-month moon calendar as well. And he's got like a whole pamphlet of information about it and a calendar that he gives out. That's actually one of the things he was sharing with me recently. I thought that was interesting. You guys are both on that same, you know, that same journey. And where's the place in North Carolina you guys are going to check out?
It's Earth Haven.
Earth Haven. Oh yeah. I've heard of that one.
Actually, you know, one of the things that Denise and I are doing is fairly immediate. We're looking at hoping to find an alternative place to live within 2 or 3 months, kind of tops. So we've been furiously scouring what's out there. I've looked at every intentional community in the country, and there's like 2 that seem to be off the grid, fully independent. You know, have the kind of the modicum of social structure that we want, and that we're going to check out. One of them is Earth Haven. I can't remember the other one. Dancing Rabbit is the other one in Missouri. But those two seem to be, you know, not real high end and not real low end, and off the grid, and kind of in the mainstream of initial income requirements to get into them.
I want to add that they don't seem to have a proper social structure. The social structure that I have been working on with some others is extremely sovereign based, and the money system. You know, I can't stand money myself, but the money system changes our whole perspective and direction. There's one already out there which I recommend, which is called Numeroset. It's very rudimentary. The trouble with cryptocurrencies is that only the tech people know how they run, and we need to have things that are very understandable to the average person in the street. So I was going to say something else. I've forgotten it to do with that. And it was pretty.
There's
important.
also a back door with cryptos.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin.
Well, without getting into too much of a debate on cryptos, definitely not all cryptos are built the same, and not all blockchains are built the same. And I've seen people build blockchains that are based in universal basic income, for example, like, which it hasn't really worked out, because if you just give something away for free every day, it kind of doesn't have much value. But, you know, people are trying to use the blockchain in different forms and different ways, and to make it user friendly. And I've been working with one crypto that's focused on that, like turning crypto into a card that people are used to. But I do think that whether it's crypto or even, I'm partial to paper alternative currencies. When we were traveling on one of my speaking tours in California, I can't remember what the town is called. It's this real small town up in Northern California. And they had their own local paper currency that they used, and they had got all the local businesses to accept it. And they had an artist design the front and the back and gave it a value compared to US dollars and in different things. And, you know, there's lots of good historical examples of alternative currencies working within a community and then maybe outside as well. And Keita, did you have something to say?
Yeah, on this very topic, I actually started an online grocery store, a bulk food store for organic food. And the idea about it, like behind of it is like using crypto. I have a cryptocurrency called the OG token. It's on the testnet on the EOS blockchain. And the idea behind it is to bring more access to organic food to low-income communities around here in Toronto, where I live. And it's so that the community owns the grocery store. So by purchasing the currency, you can either stake it to get a certain amount of like the profits from the grocery store every month, or you can spend it in the grocery store and get things. And you can also volunteer at the grocery store. So it'll be run, like once I get a location, my biggest hurdle is financial, obviously, but like that's the whole idea behind it is right now I just have like an online store where I'm selling like bulk organics, and eventually I want to get a location where people can volunteer, get tokens and use it at the store, or they can own a piece of the store and get a piece of the income from the store every month.
That's a really cool idea. Is there anything online people can find out more about that?
Yeah, my store, it's called the OG store, and right now I have the Canadian site up. It's theogstore.ca. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now with it. I'm just pretty much selling what I have. I have like a few wholesalers, and I'm connecting through that. And I want to work with farms so that people can volunteer on the farm and know where their food's coming from now, and like purchase a farm. We all own the farm so that food is not wasted, and food is like organic. We know where it comes from. More people will be inclined to make sure they're buying only what they're going to eat, or like, you know, not be less wasteful. And it's also I'm focused on zero waste as well, like to get rid of all this plastic stuff that's like polluting our earth.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. One point that just came up in my mind as I was listening to the different ideas everybody's having, I just want to say for me, so this is something that as we're thinking of, I guess each of us have a different vision, a different specific goal. I know for me personally, my plan is to learn from a lot of amazing people like Stephen Brooks and others who are already building communities. And a few years back, I did some woofing, some volunteering on different community farms, and I've been to my grandmother's farm, and I'm learning from a lot of people, but I personally want to create something new. I am not interested in joining somebody else's pre-existing community, other than maybe just like, again, like volunteering or learning from them. But ultimately what I see myself doing is building something new. So that's just something that I want to share. Anybody else want to share their visions or their place or their goals, where you're at financially, mentally, physically, whatever?
Hey, my name is Chris Carlson. And I don't know, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I want to, well, first I'll just thank Derrick for putting this together. This is really great to hear. And I don't know, from my perspective, a few ideas that have come into my head is, well, like you said, you wanted to start something new. And for me, this is also kind of about starting something new. And I almost want to say, to me, this is something, you know, and I'm kind of new to this. You know, it's just been a couple of years that I've been looking into intentional communities and, you know, sort of a new way of living. But to me, it strikes me that we as a species essentially are really at a crossroads. And I think that this way of life that we're kind of discussing right now is almost like a mandatory evolutionary change that we have to make as a species if we're going to survive in the long term. And so to me, starting something new, you know, Derrick, when you put out the original video advertising this thing, you kind of mentioned a few things like an underground railroad for getting humanitarian supplies into places. Like, essentially, to me, in my mind, I was imagining a movement size thing. And I almost think that this movement type of thing, this new way of life, has to, I mean, it has to form, and it is, I think it is forming. And I don't know, I'm excited to hear about all this stuff, but I also, I just feel like we almost need to think big. We need to think big about a way to make a transition to a new way of life easy for many people, because capitalism is running off the rails right now. And I mean, personally, I foresee potential financial collapse in the future. I see a lot of trouble in the head, economic, financial trouble in the global, market or around the world that could lead to major social unrest. And I think that we're in a position right now where if we can start leading the way in an alternative way of life, when that social collapse comes, there's going to be a lot of people who look up and go, hey, this system isn't working at all. What can we do better? And so that's why, just in my mind, coming up with ways for collaboration among people and more communal ways of living, I think this is like an essential thing to the survival of the species. And so I don't know. I don't even know exactly how to do it or what we're supposed to do. But I mean, the ideas about permaculture and stuff are a really good start, and also the principles of, the golden rule or nonviolent communication, like Derrick said. All these strike me as really good places. I almost feel like we need to, have a strong commitment to this type of community. If you're going to join it, we need to have people would need to have a strong commitment to really be a part of it, be helpful. And I don't know. It's a really big thing that I think is going on, but I think that this is a really important change because, like Diane said, the psychopaths have been running things for too long and they're about to run this whole system into the ground. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
I would like to jump in there and agree with what you're stressing, the importance of commitment. This is Rob. And that's been my experience is a lot of people want to talk about this kind of stuff, but basically everybody's still a statist. And nobody wants to step out of that realm and commit to something like this. And I understand a lot of people have good reasons why they just can't do that. But what I'm interested in is people who are ready to take the risk, take the commitment. And I still have to question myself if I'm actually ready. But I think I'm more ready than a lot of the people I've attempted to go down this road with. And I've spent the last probably 4 or 5 years with a couple of different networks of people that, for different reasons, for another conversation, that it just fizzled out. I think what resonates with me as a foundation for all of this is what Derrick talks about, counter economics. This is something that I felt very strongly about. I didn't know what to call it until I heard Derrick talking about it. And agorism. And admittedly, I haven't looked into and read a lot about agorism or counter economics, but from what I've heard, it resonates with my conviction. And stop contracting with the state. Stop carrying a driver's license. Stop registering to vote. Stop being part of this system. But we have to lay the foundations for this new thing. And like whoever was just speaking, I forgot your name, but you were talking about when it comes to the point that things kind of crash and people are going to be like, okay, what I keep saying is when it comes to that point, people are going to either be scrambling for the solution that the powers that be have prepared, or they're going to say enough is enough. And I think what we're talking about here is trying to start to lay the foundation so that when that time comes, that more people will go in this direction. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I didn't derail the conversation.
No, thank you. Thank you, Rob.
That's a real dilemma. Where do you go? It seems as though I've been to 4 or 5 different eco villages, and I've studied. I actually ran one for myself here in a trailer, if you can believe that. And it seems as though you can. The quickest, easiest way to go from where you are to some sort of a semi-communal, like-minded place is just to get a house and start filling it with like-minded thinkers. But to go the intentional community route right now, is a pain in the ass. You got to go through the city planning and zoning, get permits for this and permits for that, and I mean it can really be an incredible struggle. That's why I kind of went into an existing trailer park and tried to bring my influences along with. But getting a house, you can go in the country, you can buy 20 acres, you can start farming, you can. I mean, it's just a whole lot easier to start with a kind of a communal house that grows into an intentional community than to go buy raw land. I'd be interested in the guy from what was the island, what he had to go through to get all that nonsense. Maybe that's why it's not in this country.
Yeah, no, I think that there are benefits to not being in the United States. And this is something I've started to talk about more recently. For one, besides the obvious, everybody's talking about something not so fun coming on the horizon, whether you're talking about economic, just governmental or environmental, whatever, that there are reasons for us to pursue this lifestyle and pursue, I think, an alternative lifestyle, an alternative to this kind of mainstream dominant culture, which we're all talking about here, right? And Rob and Chris are both, I think, making important points about laying the foundation. And so for me, one of the reasons I've started to look more and more outside of the United States and to places like Mexico and obviously Costa Rica, places where the federal government is not nearly as strong or as wealthy as the United States, where they don't have the ability to chase down and harass everybody for every little thing that they're doing. And also places where the governments are less restrictive of what you do with your own land. I mean, I have friends who've bought land here in the United States in Arizona, only to later find out that they couldn't even camp on their own land without getting a permit, things like that. And, I'm not willing to commit to a land project that's going to have those sort of circumstances. I'm not going to pay any money or sign a contract that says I rent a piece of land and I can't even camp on it without asking for permission or something like that. So that's one of the reasons I've started to look elsewhere. And again, Chris was talking about this idea. I've talked about having, like, if we do, in my view, I'm definitely thinking 7 generations longer, bigger term, not just the rest of our lives. And we're all at different ages, so we all have different timelines, but thinking way beyond any of our lifetimes and into the future. And what if some collapse or something catastrophic is coming in the future, or even if it doesn't, I would like to lay the foundation for a future of an example of a community. Somebody talked about this earlier, a community that could be scalable and that could be used and replicated very easily in other places. And obviously different factors based on the environment and resources and all that. But being able to create a model and using models from the past, like from that book I was showing you guys earlier and from other successful intentional communities, and using the technology that we have now and all the knowledge we have of the past to create something that can really be a model for others to use and to adapt to their own needs and their own means. So, I mean, I definitely am trying to think big picture of creating something, and I also agree with you, Chris, as far as, if you have a piece of land, I kind of envision, like, let's say everybody here on this group decided that we were all going to buy a shared piece of land. Like, if we had a piece of land, I imagine the first thing we would do is maybe build something that was communal that we all could share. Maybe before everybody starts moving on the land, at least we have one single space that can be used for meetings, for events, for coordinating together, and for just having that first piece of shelter. And then we start everybody starts working on their different projects and whatnot, because I want to live in a hobbit house. The only experience I have with alternative architecture I have is with working with cob and geothermal is definitely something I'm interested in. I also, that's the other thing, is I would like to live amongst other people who, nothing wrong with if you want AC or anything like that, but being able to have the comforts and the luxuries that we're accustomed to, but doing them, in a way that's not dependent on just the local electric company, that we could really truly do some off-grid stuff and still have electricity and still have AC or what have you, but not being dependent on those systems. So, yeah, and there was a couple of comments. Some Mads said, I don't have a mic, but I totally agree with Chris. This is the only way of the future. And I also threw out 2 documentaries that you guys might want to check out. One is called Inhabit, a Permaculture Perspective. It's a really, really awesome documentary that shows examples of permaculture based in the city, in the country, and in the suburbs too. Like, it's a mix of showing different styles in different ways. And then the other one was we just watched the other day, is called Be the Change. and it's also permaculture related. And I didn't agree with everything that was stated in the documentary, but they gave a lot of examples of people who are actually taking action, you know. And this is the thing I appreciate. Whether or not I agree with somebody's politics 100%, I can respect somebody who is taking action. You know what I mean? They're actually doing things. They're actually getting off these systems and not just arguing with people on the internet about it.
Sorry,
Yep.
something Rob said. Sorry, Derek. Great what you said though. Rob, the thing is, what we can do is, and I love this. We don't have to be any kind of people. Everybody should have the ability to invest in their efforts into a system that is for the people. And I can talk to anybody about it later, but I've been working on these kind of systems, and I think they're awesome. They bring back things. They bring back all the power to the sovereign, and everything is issued by the sovereign. The currency will be issued by the sovereign, and everybody is a sovereign. And so everybody can invest time or money into building up a system for the people alongside this crazy system. But we just put some time into it that we can spare, and all the time that's put into it will be recorded, because what we value, we record. And then we build it up so that when this collapses, there'll be something there, because what they do, the psychopaths, is they occupy the future ground, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to occupy that ground by having something ready for when that happens.
Well, I agree about investing the time, and just I'll take that as a quick segue for me to just say that what I bring to the table is carpentry skills. I don't have land, I don't have money, but I am a well-accomplished carpenter, and so that's what I bring to the table.
Where do you live?
Right on.
Right on. Currently, I live in Kentucky, West Kentucky, just below Missouri, or kind of near that area. I know you guys mentioned community in Missouri and North Carolina. And as a musician, I'm also interested in being close enough to areas where I could go and play music on the street and things like that. And I know North Carolina has Asheville. So anyway, I'm interested in maybe talking to you guys more, but we can do that later.
We're actually
President
going
Thomas, you're for the American Intelligence Media. Of course, if you've been with us a while, you know that we're Tyler and Douglas Gabriel. But we're not going to rush, because Thomas has so much to say. So we're going to do what we can. If we need to cut off, we'll provide you with a second video. But I'm telling you,
Stop their YouTube of Aim for Truth.
What just happened there?
I think that was somebody playing a video. Does anybody else have anything else they want to speak up, talk about?
What's up, everybody? My name is Joe. Me, man, I just kind of joined in. I was helping out my parents. They broke down. But what was it? I'm 23. I don't really have much, I guess I would say, super useful skills other than just a hard work ethic, and I actually think about these kind of things when I'm trying to go to sleep, and it's pretty scary to think that, like, yo, if something were to happen, I mean, a lot of us would be fucked, you know, and a lot of my family members would be fucked. And I think about that, and that keeps me up. So I've been, you know, working with my cousin. We're just trying to get active and actually come out here and do some stuff. I mean, I'm in a townhouse, so granted, I don't have a big yard or anything, but, you know, I just think about what Derek says, you know, just be the change and just try to do something. So, I mean, now that's becoming springtime, I'm over here. I'm going to start gardening, try to build like a little small greenhouse with the help of my friend who works with a farmer. So he already knows a couple things. I mean, I work in a body shop, you know, so I know how to work on cars a little bit. That's not like, I guess it would be super helpful or anything like that, but I have a little bit of knowledge when it comes to that, and I'm a little handy when it comes to certain things, but I'm just trying to gather up all the knowledge and know-how with my hands, you know, and just going out there and experimenting and just doing it. But think about what Derek said, how he's talking about like going to Mexico and other places. Well, my family's from Colombia. I've been out there a couple times, so I've just I know for me, saving up money where I'm at right now, I've just been really thinking about, getting land out there in Colombia. And I know it's like really cheap out there for any dollar you get here, it's like $3 their money. So I've just been, trying to get 50, 60K going up so I can get a good piece of property out there. So I can actually go out there and start doing something, but I don't know. I feel kind of nervous a little bit. I don't know why, but
Hey man, thank
yeah,
you for
that's really
sharing,
all.
brother. We appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate you taking those first couple steps, man, because that's where it starts. You start doing a little bit of springtime gardening, and the next thing you know, you're growing most, if not all, your food. It starts with those small steps, no matter where you're at, brother. So thank you for sharing, and definitely working on cars can be a very valuable skill. For those of us like myself who are not very,
Amen.
inclined to that knowledge.
Thank you, thank you. I'm located in Northern Virginia in the suburbs outside of DC. So if anyone was curious.
Yeah, connect with Danny Quest. Danny's on the line. Danny's out there not too far from DC as well. You guys should link up and see what y'all can do together. I do know that we had Laurel just a moment ago said she had something she wanted to share. Are you still there, Laurel?
How do I sound? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm in Texas, and I'm just wanting to work with people here.
What was that?
And I agree with Derrick. I wouldn't be here, so.
So where you said you're in Texas, how close would you say you are to trying to start or join a community, or or where are you at in that journey?
Well, I'm trying to get started in May.
So you're like with Chris and Denise, you're ready to make the move pretty quickly here.
I'd like to, yeah.
And did she say she was from Texas? Oh, that's right.
So what's your vision of what you want to see, Laurel, or who the kind of people you want to work with? Like, what are you looking for particularly that comes to mind for you?
I think we should get into a region and get our own sheriff. We don't need to have live on the same property, but I think we should take over, our own area.
Yeah, I've heard people talk. I've had friends talk about this, like getting to move. And I think even like in New Hampshire, the Free State Project is kind of a similar idea, like moving as many people as possible to a particular area. And like if you get enough people go to a small town where you could elect everybody to the sheriff and to the mayor and the council and basically try to create like a free little town or free area. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but I'm actually an anarchist. I'm against property tax.
Good to hear. So would that be the first thing that you would want to do then in this new town?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. You know what, you want to say what part you're in Texas, or do you not want to?
Right now, I'm just north of San Antonio, but I'm moving. So I want to go west.
So some other considerations I think that are important are weather itself, but the whatever we believe or whether we trust the United Nations or not, and I'm not really one to trust the United Nations. It's helpful to listen to what they're saying because they might have some insight knowledge that we don't. But some of the worst predictions of climate change and different just changes in the environment and the earth predict, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but definitely some pretty, I think, in the range of 5 feet to 10 feet to 20 feet to probably something really outrageous, and a rise of sea level. So thinking about where you're going to live in the future, I think things like sea level and how close you are to water, not only for drinking water, but in the case of some environmental crazy whatever, whether it's engineered or real or whatever, but just, those kinds of considerations are things that I've had brought to me by other people. I've talked about this before. Does anybody have any other thoughts as far as environmental type of concerns? Like, again, like being able to have an access to a water supply is extremely important. A place that that you can, I think definitely planting as many fruit forests and food forests as possible is important.
I dig everything you talk about. That's why I'm not really saying much. But I think I'm Sarge Gorilla on YouTube, and I mentioned Concan and the Frio River area. Do you know where that is?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm into permaculture, aquaponics. I'm 54. I can do pretty much anything, and my soulmate, he can do what I can't do. So we're gunsmiths. Like everything. I'm a farmer. So I'm a biologist. I'm an herbologist. I'm a rebel.
Yeah, Derrick, if you don't mind, I just want to kind of second that idea. That's actually, I've never heard that before, but that seems to me like something, if we just spread the word enough about some area, if we just agreed on some area, some town, I mean, maybe we need a few other people with a little bit of a platform, but it seems to me like it would be theoretically possible to orchestrate some kind of a mass migration to some area. And I don't know. I just never heard that idea before. And so I just want to.
I've got a lot of ideas. I've been very politically active here in Texas, and I've done a lot of recon. I've talked to a lot of people, and I just didn't want to talk about it too much right now. I wanted to listen to you guys more. So.
Well, thank you for sharing, Laurel. Is there anybody else with that would like to share either about their land, their projects, or just where they're at in their journey?
Yeah, whenever I can, I'll jump in.
Go ahead, brother.
Again, I just wanted to underscore this whole buying a house routine, because I've been looking at all the ways to do it in the United States with the least amount of political bullshit. And there are places, because farmland, there's a lot of farms in Vermont that are dying. So there's a lot of farm property that's fairly cheap. And they've already been through all the crap you've got to go through with zoning and water and permits. And most of the time, once you're into an existing facility, the amount of red tape you have to go through from there is minimal. And there are still some places in Vermont that have no zoning. So you can kind of do what you want and put in composting and look at alternative energy systems without having to look at 10 years of red tape, which is the biggest problem I found on starting something in this country. And the easiest way it seemed was through this kind of communal, buy a big old farmhouse and then, with some land, and then renovate it, bring it back, and start off with just people staying there. And then as they want to grow and it becomes a community, they can add on a building or bring in a trailer or a tiny home or whatever it takes. That to me, within the States, looked to be the easiest way to start something quickly.
So Chris, do you mean like, as far as you're talking about getting farmland, do you mean like on paper, like buying a piece of land that's registered as a farm so that you're getting certain privileges or benefits from that? Or do you mean just literally like finding some land and buying a house together to start with?
No, but I mean, I've looked at like just 10-acre parcels where it's already zoned for whatever you want to do. So you can do farming, you can do whatnot. Oftentimes they come with a small barn or a hut for animals. So you just start growing your own food, whether it's in a permaculture environment or just in an off the grid way. And there's a lot of them that are fairly inexpensive. And especially if you're looking to put in some sweat equity and work on the place and kind of bring it back, the main thing is a community of like-minded thinkers that you work hard and then you can eat and discuss and go to your own separate accommodations and kind of live off the grid in a way that you feel is compatible. One of the problems I had here in this trailer park, and I don't mean to sound, but it just was not the deep end of the pool. What I was trying to accomplish, nobody really cared about. All they really were interested in was, how cheap it was and whether they could save a buck. It wasn't necessarily about the kind of resilience and sustainability and So and then I got into kind of a rift with the owner of the place. He got very threatened by me, even though he shouldn't have. But in that old model there, it's a king serf thing. The guy who owns all this land, we have 65 trailers on it. So he was not used to everybody bowed to him because their lease for the land was controlled their property. So it was anyway, it didn't work out. But I did learn a lot from the process, and I've researched 3 or 4 other intentional communities, and it seems the easiest way to go is with an existing facility, because all of that stuff is done. And there are some up here that are already off the grid. They're camps in the mountains, so they have no power, or they have gas, or they have electric. What's interesting about North Carolina is they've got some mini hydro systems set up that I really want to research. That's just channeling the existing stream, brook, through some sort of an energy collection device that just uses the water to generate some power and then goes back into the stream. I mean, and it has batteries to back it up, and I don't know. There could be some interesting things, but to me, it seemed like the easiest way to start some sort of intentional living situation was to buy a home, was to buy, something with 10. We've seen properties that are affordable that go up to 50, 60 acres, which would support quite a bit. And with no zoning, and if you did cluster development, you could do quite a bit of, you could put a fair number of people in something like that.
Awesome. Hey, just a couple of things, guys, I want to mention. So I have about another 40 minutes or so that I can do on this call we can keep going until then before I have to sign off. But if you guys are able to see the chat, if you're on your laptop, you should see it to the right side. If not, just look for it. Everybody who can see the chat, please put in your email, and that'll make it a lot easier for me to just share everybody's emails afterwards. Because I see that some of you guys, for example, somebody said something about linking up with Annie. I think that was you, Clark. I think she already signed off the call, but I can connect you to her, and I'll just make sure to get as many emails as possible. And I have most of your emails as well. And yeah, so we're getting a lot of different ideas here, and I appreciate everybody sharing. Anybody else want to step up and share about just ideas they have for land, or where you're at, or what your goals are, things like that?
The one other thing I wanted to say about a sheriff is that the sheriff is the highest elected official actually in charge of your rights in the United States. And so they can protect you from the federal government and create their own militia. So that's what I was kind of saying about that.
Thank you, Annie. Excuse me, Laurel. Randall, did you have something you wanted to add in? I know you just popped on.
I was thinking just about a go-to place, like maybe Costa Rica was floated to me by somebody. Actually, I'm in contact with Cheryl Peel Jackson, and she's looking into Costa Rica. She just bought some property there. So that was on my mind. I think America is still it's still a good place to be, but it's just my heart to have a go-to place somewhere else.
I think that's a wise idea for sure. We've got about 23 people on right now, and we've heard from just a few of them. Anybody else who hasn't spoke yet feel like saying anything? I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to.
Hey. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to introduce myself real quick. My name is Callie, and currently we live outside of Denver. Actually, Derrick came to your thing when you came through Denver last summer. It was really awesome. The community outreach project was cool. It is our immediate family is myself and my partner, and then we have a 12-year-old, and we have spent the last couple years looking for land in the U.S., but after hunting and researching for all this time, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I don't really want to make that big of a commitment to anything in the U.S., mostly because of, like you mentioned before, all the building restrictions and red tape, and they really don't give you a whole lot of freedom something I'm really passionate about is just the idea of everyone having a right to a piece of land that they can build and grow on to support themselves. And I think when people complain about capitalism, that is kind of what it seems to come down to for me, is that the land is not free. I wanted to mention that I'm very interested in veganic permaculture. I'm personally interested in animal rights. That's one of my passions. We actually live with quite a few rescued animals right now, but we're hoping that as we get more land, we can expand that. My partner, he does IT stuff. He has a corporate job here right now, but that's definitely a skill we can contribute. I grew up on a farm, so I definitely love all the outdoor stuff, and the idea of doing cob houses especially, but all kinds of natural building I'm interested in. We unschool, and I definitely love what I think his name was Wes mentioned earlier about having 3 generations on any kind of community. And one more thing I wanted to mention, someone commented about commitment, and as far as communal living goes, I'm sort of a cult survivor. I spent 20 years in kind of a culty religion, and it's I have a good support system of people who've also gone through the same thing, and I'm very interested in the psychology behind that. And I think that just humans dealing with other humans is where so many of these projects goes wrong. So I really love your vision, Derrick, of putting like the non-aggression principle at the top of the priorities list, and nonviolent communication. But I've also done a lot of research into how cult situations form, and a lot of times they do form from good intentioned people in communities, but then sometimes a leader emerges and stuff. So I'm also very interested in avoiding that and being able to determine the signs. And I'm sure that there are some books written about this topic. I would like to find some. I haven't seen any yet, but of how that can apply to intentional communities, just avoiding that kind of situation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Callie, and I appreciate all that information. And can we all just agree that we're not interested in starting or joining a cult? And I mean that seriously, like, right. Yeah, I'm not in this to get a cult formed around my work or me or anything like that. Want to find some other awesome people to work with. And yeah, definitely unschooling. It's been mentioned a couple of times now, the idea of having multiple generations. It brought me back to thinking of one of the latest projects that Stephen Brooks is working on. We've mentioned him a few times. He's now working on adding, in addition to a community that he already formed, he's adding now an elders village to this community because his parents are getting older, and as we all will get older. And he just started thinking about how, and we've seen this in one of the times we were at Punta Mona, that a lot of communities often are geared around like just younger generations, because maybe younger generations are just starting to think this way. But there's also obviously people of all ages who are interested in these ideas. But sometimes the elderly or the older generations and the younger generations, the kids, can get left behind. So I think it is important to have a community that is thinking about how we can take care of the older generations and incorporate the knowledge and the wisdom from the older generations, as well as helping shape, the families being able to have a safe space to shape the minds of their kids in a very beautiful and free way, right? So I do think that those things are important. But again, everybody's going to have different standards on what their communities look like. I think one kind of homework thing that could be good for us reconnecting again in, I don't know, a week or two or next month or whatever's convenient, would be for each of us here who haven't already stopped and thought, what are the standards of the community I want to live in? Like, if you were forming a community today and you had the perfect plot of land and you had all the resources and the money and all that, what would be your kind of, I don't like to say requirements, but let's just be real, whether we're talking about the bigger world or your own little shack or your piece of land, you're going to have rules and expectations for the ways that people act on that piece of land. Obviously, like I said, not using violence. That's a kind of basic one, right? But what other things that come to your mind, like the type of people you want to live with, the type of people that you want to live near, even if you weren't living in the same house as them, you're just living on the same piece of property. These are things that I think that if you haven't stopped to think about yet, they're very important to think about. And I see from Clark, any countries besides Costa Rica that interest you? Honestly, I'm most looking at Mexico right now. Mexico is just, I mean, it's a huge country with a lot of beauty. And the more time we spend there, like we really fall in love with it. And also it doesn't hurt that Joe was kind of talking about this, that when you go to the US, to Mexico, your money definitely goes a lot further than it does, you know, at home. And that's just, you know, whatever. It's by accident of birth. I happen to live across this other line on a map that says my money is worth more. But for me, somebody whose most of my income is coming digitally and coming from working online, I could be in Mexico or be wherever else and getting paid in US dollars or crypto or other ways, and then turning those into pesos and making that money go much, much further. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in looking at different parts of Mexico. I'm not 100% stuck on Mexico yet. And I'm honestly not even 100% stuck on leaving the US if like the perfect opportunity presented itself. But it just, for me, to be 100% honest, it is getting increasingly difficult for me to think about, again, buying a piece of land, the idea of putting some time into it for long term to maybe potentially one day raise a family or to just do these kinds of things when I see the increasingly totalitarian nature of the US government. And I mean, that's just being real, that, you know, and it's not to me running away. It's about realizing that I don't know that there's enough people out there who are willing to say, hey, no, I won't let the government force vaccinate your child, or that I won't let the government come take you away if you're not paying taxes, or, you know, and I haven't formed enough of a community to feel protected that there are other people who are going to step up whenever those times come, because they will come. Or whenever they say, hey, you know, you now have to have this national ID card, the real ID card, which is coming in the next couple of years. And just kind of another reason that by 2021, in order to fly in the US domestically or internationally, you're going to have your face scanned. Like, these are kinds of things that I am not willing to, those are lines for me, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, no, that's too far. I'm going to have to go somewhere else and just build somewhere else for the time. But yeah, so I think thinking about what are your specific goals, what are your requirements that you would want from other people, and please feel free to share about any of this. Do you have any particular areas of Mexico that you favor? There's a couple of small towns that we definitely have really fallen in love with, but they're not the perfect place, I would say, for building this community. Still looking for that, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity. I mean, Mexico has a rich history of people pushing back against the federal government. I mean, from the Zapatistas to the more recent community in Cherán, Mexico, they've celebrated 7 years of overthrowing the police and the politicians and kicking out the political parties and returning back to their indigenous ways of organizing. And they have town councils and they have their whole system, right? And, you know, whether that's the system we want or not, it's just an example that there are communities, people who are able to push back against the federal government over there and survive and live and thrive. You know, I can't imagine what would happen in the United States if one of us tried to form a neighborhood and just fight the federal government. You know, I mean, they would call us terrorists and it would be a massacre. But there are places in Mexico where you can get away with that.
It's not going to happen in Mexico. You know, it's like there's kind of a big plan. And like the way I look at it is I feel, you know, I would like my peers to be around me, a jury of your peers. And I wouldn't fit in really in Mexico. Whereas there's so many people here that are a lot, you know, like me. So I feel like if we could just network those people, we might have a chance at it, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing is, that's why I think these calls are important, because I'm not expecting, again, back to the not trying to be a cult leader thing, I'm not expecting everybody to follow the vision I'm laying out here. This is a chance for each of us to kind of share like where our visions are. And some of us might work together, some of us might not, but maybe through these calls, we can make new connections and we can learn from each other. I think that's kind of the bigger goal, right? So that, because I mean, the reality is, we don't just need each of us to live on one single community. We need to build these communities in as many places as possible all over the world, like not just the United States, but really everywhere. Because when we're talking about creating communities that could be used as a model, if we show it can work in one area, then hopefully we can inspire and work with other people in different areas to build these things. And, you know, the vision that I described is like, if we're doing that, and Rob talked about this, Chris talked about this, if we're building the foundation, then whatever's coming up ahead in the future, we will make it will be a lot more bearable for us and for the future generations if we actually take action now and start organizing, start getting off the grid, off these systems. Yeah. Anything else anybody would like to share about their vision, Randall?
How about something like maybe a network of communities where we all have a go-to place, and we're not necessarily anchored in any one place. I mean, we might have our home base, but then, you know, if it hits the fan and it gets bad in a certain area, we can always go to, you know, somebody else in the network.
I think that's right. We need a network of communities. I'm going to mention this. I don't know if you guys are all familiar. Yeah, freedomcells.org, www.freedomcells.org. If you hadn't heard me talk about this, it's just a website that's built for people like us to go join and to create a profile of your skills and your interests, and to search for other people and their skills and interests. And I am always promoting it. And sometimes the website's active, sometimes there's not a lot of people on there. But the most important part of it is there's a map on there for you to search, and you can search 5 miles, 10 miles, and 50 miles. And you can find people who are in your region and what they're talking about, what they're interested in. And you can create cells or circles of other people and start organizing locally in your community. And that's kind of the goal, is that if people are starting to, like Joe, go to the farmers markets more, or start building backyard gardens, or more people are learning about permaculture, and more people are finding ways to avoid property tax, or to avoid you know, these various things, and to focus on solutions, then we are going to create a network of communities like Randall's talking about.
Yeah, I really like the idea of a network of communities around the world. This is Wes again. You recognize my voice. I left a couple of things in the chat I just wanted to explain. Yeah, the town in Mexico, there's a link there, the activist post link. Derrick mentioned it. It'd be an interesting place. I also left a link for the calendar, the 13 months, 28-day calendar. It's an initiative I work on. And then I also left a link for AnastasiaUSA.land. And if anyone's familiar with the Ringing Cedars of Russia books, this is like a 10-book long series, and it's all about getting back to living in harmony with nature and not paying taxes. And it's definitely a site that you might want to, you know, get their newsletter and read those books if you're into this type of stuff.
All right. Anybody else want to share anything else?
Where are those links?
They're in the chat. He posted those in the chat. So if you guys haven't looked over, there's a chat option over here, and you can see that there's been a conversation going in there. I've been dropping links. People have been dropping links. And if you do see the chat, please do put your email in there. I'm taking everybody's email so I can at least directly contact everybody who was on this call, and I'll do a little recap of some of the things we discussed, and then maybe we can coordinate a follow-up call. And I'm down to do this as often as necessary. Obviously, the goal is to use these calls as a way to actually push us to taking action. But you know, there's a lot of questions and a lot of different areas that this conversation could go. So
I just want to say hello. Nice to meet everybody.
You too.
No, I really do appreciate everybody's time. I mean, this is just, I think, the beginning of taking some important steps, because I think many of us are feeling the pressure and the urgency, the sense of urgency to start building for our families, for ourselves, for the future, because I'm not content with going to the grocery store and buying my food from there forever. I'm not content with having to worry about what new invasion of privacy or invasion of my freedom or what propaganda is being spread around me. I want to at least try to live my life building a space that can be free as possible and be an example to other people, so that these ideas are never forgotten and that people have somewhere to look to, and we can help them as well as much as possible. So yeah. All right, guys, I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you, Derrick.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jerry.
I'm sorry, I came in kind of late, and I didn't get Wes's links in the chat. I don't know if they were like posted before I came in, but
well, if you guys want, when I send out this email, I'll include all the links that were shared in as well, so everybody can kind of click through everything that was shared. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Did you put your email in there, Randall?
I did.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. Yeah, I'll send out that email with all the links. I just saved the chat so I can get that. I'll edit out your email, Rob. No concern about that. And yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks, Derrick.
Peace.
Peace, y'all.